Welcome to 24/7 World Radio Podcast with Brother Eric John Phillips here this evening at 5 o'clock EST from Newmanstown, Pennsylvania. And trust you're having a great day serving the Lord. And with us, we have tonight our dear brother in Christ and an erudite researcher, Brother George Widger. Brother George, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Brother Eric. As always, it's a pleasure to be on with you.
It's my pleasure. All right, so again, this is November the 12th, 2025, which is a Wednesday. And so we're going to start our podcast now with Brother George. So, Brother George, what do you have for us this evening?
Well, okay, before I get into the piece de resistance, I like to share the scripture verse,
Yeah.
or verses, rather, which is John 10, verses 12 and 13. Oh, we'll start verse 9, actually. John 10, verse 9. I am the door. By me, if any man enter in, he shall be saved, and shall go in and out and find pasture. The thief cometh not but to steal and to kill and to destroy. I I am come that they might have life, and that they might have it abundantly. Uh, Verse 11. I am the good shepherd, and the shepherd giveth his life for the sheep. Verse 12. But he that is a hireling is not the shepherd, whose own sheep they are not. Seeth the wolf coming, and leaveth the sheep and fleeth. And the wolf catcheth them and scattereth the sheep. The hireling fleeth because he is a hireling and careth not for the sheep. Okay, so the question is well, now and for the last, say, 2,000 years or so is, what is the difference between a pastor and a hireling? Well, you could say that's a rhetorical question, but it's also a legitimate question. So,
It's
in
a
your
very,
opinion,
very legitimate question. Yeah, because many of them are hirelings. Go ahead, George.
okay, so what is the difference in
One's
your
doing it
humble?
for money. One's doing it for money, and the other's doing it for the Lord because he loves the church.
Okay, so you said okay, so one is essentially a mercenary. Now, I'm not sure how this came about, but most of your evangelical, Protestant, and Baptist churches have certain requirements to be a pastor. You had to have an undergrad degree, and you had to have a master's degree on top of that, divinity or theology. And
You
you
know
may
what?
be wondering, oh, okay,
I just had a thought, George. When I was stationed in New Mexico, I used to go to a little Southern Baptist church there. And on the way to church one day, we pulled over at the gas station, and there was a little black boy riding a bike, maybe about 10 or so. And we got to talking. He says, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I plan to go to Bible college and hopefully to be a pastor and preach the gospel." He said, "Go to Bible college?" He said, "All you really need is for the Lord to call you. And if you have the calling of God, that's really what you need." And I thought, you know, there was a remarkable wisdom in what that little guy said at 10 years of age, because the vast majority of these Baptist ministers that I'm aware of are not called. They are hirelings. They're doing it for money or for fame or for something like that. So I remember that day very clearly. Way back in 1970, 73, when I was stationed in Clovis. But go ahead, George.
okay, well, I've known a number of pastors over the years, those who are actually active and those who are going to become pastors. They just got out of seminary or something like that. And I knew a fellow near Sacramento, California, who just graduated from Talbot, which is part of Biola, Bible Institute of Los Angeles. And he was going to be, I believe, some sort of Presbyterian minister. I believe Presbyterian Church USA. And Bob was his name. And turns out that he got his undergrad degree from St. Mary's College in La Moraga, California, which is Catholic.
Uh-huh.
And and I asked him, well, Bob, why did you go to Catholic school? And he said they had a wonderful business program. And okay, All right, I suppose that could be an argument. But one of the problems is with the modern church, and this has been the case, this appears to be an American situation, is you have these young men, and God forbid young women, who are graduate from seminary and they need a job. So they'll be hired by one of these mega churches. They'll become an assistant pastor, an associate pastor, or senior executive associate pastor, whatever, and they'll get involved in the youth group or college and career. And after a few years, they might as they've cut their teeth, they might get their own church. But it's almost like a profession. It's like becoming a
Yeah.
doctor or lawyer.
Yes, it's become a profession.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
and of course, something that's correlated with that is this massive debt because these schools are not cheap. Even your Billy Bob Bible College, those can be expensive. And,
If I didn't have the
just
GI
before
Bill,
we
I'd never gone
transition,
to it. Go ahead. If I would not have had the GI Bill, I would not have gone to Bible college. Didn't have the money. So, but go ahead.
And of course, how many of these 501c3 churches 5 or 6 years ago complied with all the COVID restrictions? The shutdowns, the first shutdowns, the second shutdowns, the temperature checks, the mask requirements, all those sort of insane things. Well, most of the churches complied, at least in places like California.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were a few that did not, such as a Calvary Chapel in San Jose. As a matter of fact, they were hit with something like over $1 million in fines from the state of California for not complying with the restrictions, something like 1.2 or $1.3 million, and these fines are still outstanding.
Yeah, they're outrageous.
Yes, they are.
Punitive. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I understand you did a stream yesterday in which you talked about the Zohan Mandani election last week in New York City. I've not had a chance to listen to it yet.
Well, I think there might be some things that are new that would be beneficial. And he comes right out of the group. You know, he's backed by George Soros, just like Obama was. His mother's a Hindu, his father's a Muslim. They both have Harvard degrees. So they're all out of the same ilk. And this guy is nothing new to the Jesuit power structure. He was raised in Uganda, yeah, and then comes here, and then I believe he's also going to go to Harvard. So I mean, anybody that goes to Harvard's a communist. They're a socialist communist and brainwashed to hate America. So he's got all the training, all the teaching, and I also kind of ended it up with saying, don't you think for 1 minute that Ma'am Danny in New York hasn't had his interviews or his counseling with the Jesuits at Fordham in the Bronx? Don't think for 1 second he hasn't been there or with the Archbishop. Because the Jesuits rule New York City. They've ruled it since 1886, since the printing of 50 Years in the Church of Rome with Cheney, when he said the Jesuits are already the masters of New York. And if the Jesuits are the masters of New York, they made Ma'am Dammy the mayor for a specific reason. So I go into that a little bit. So that was a little the backdrop that we don't normally hear. Go ahead, brother.
Okay. So specifically, Zohar Madami, and I know we've talked about him before. Specifically, he's a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, the DSA, which was founded in 1982, so 43 years ago, on March the 20th. And its founder was Michael Harrington, Edward Michael Harrington Jr., who lived from the 24th of February, 1928, died on July the 31st, 1989. So he was only 51 at the time of his death. And once again, July the 31st is the feast day of Ignatius of Loyola.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So who exactly was Michael Harrington? Well, He was of Irish Catholic descent. He got his undergrad degree from Holy Cross in Massachusetts,
And what's
which
Holy Cross?
Jesuit.
Jesuit. Every time I hear Holy Cross, the
Is
first
a
thing I
Jesuit
think of,
school in Massachusetts.
every time I hear Holy Cross, the first thing I think of is Chris Matthews and Robert Mayhew, and who was a big knot of Malta who had helped steal all of Howard Hughes' fortune. And then another one is Edward Bennett Williams. Edward Bennett Williams and Robert Mayhew were on the debating team at Holy Cross. Edward Bennett Williams went on to be the mayor of Washington, D.C., and he also was the owner of the Baltimore Orioles and another team. So powerful Knights of Malta graduated out of Jesuit Orders Holy Cross. Go ahead, George.
Okay, so I mentioned him. I mentioned Harrington to you yesterday, and prior to our conversation, you said you had never heard of him. Now, he had an intriguing background in that he also went to St. Louis University High School in St. Louis, Missouri. So he was trained by the Jesuits twice. And after he graduated,
so he went to St. Louis University?
High school.
Oh, high school. Okay.
Which is the prep school there for them. So almost every Jesuit university has a corresponding prep school.
Yeah.
So, for example, Georgetown University has Georgetown Prep, for example. And so after he graduated from Holy Cross, he wrote for the Dorothy Day Catholic Worker Movement newspaper. And even though he maintained a lifelong interest in Catholicism, he became an atheist by the end of his life.
And that's the practical conclusion of Romanism once you look at it with an objective eye. If that's God, there is no God. So, yep. Go ahead, George.
Okay, so anyhow, so Mamdani is supposed to be taking off as mayor, take office for mayor just at New Year's, so about 6 weeks from now. And he actually has a transition team. And one of the members of that team is Grace Bonilla, who's Hispanic. And I looked up her profile, and she got her undergrad degree from St. John's University in New York City, which is Catholic. And if you look at almost all of her positions on almost anything, immigration, abortion, same-sex unions, the Second Amendment, it would be at odds with ours.
That's right.
On almost all of her positions.
She's just another Roman Catholic socialist communist. That's all she is.
And a feminist for good measure.
Behind her name. Go ahead.
And a feminist for good measure.
Why, of course.
Yeah. And so I've talked to some people since last week about the election of Mamdani. This may sound like a silly question, but I'm just wondering, is mental retardation contagious? Now, I was being facetious when I asked that because I've seen a number of man in the street interviews with New Yorkers, young New Yorkers. Those are, say, 18 to, say, 25 or even 30. And say, oh, yes, we love Zohar. We can't wait for him to get into office because we're looking forward to all the goodies he'll give us. We can ride the subway for free. He'll give us a $30 an hour minimum wage. We'll have free healthcare. We'll have free schools. We'll have free universities, and life will be just swell. And
you got to go pay for it.
Well, please don't bother us with the details. And okay, I find these interviews inexplicable because it seems as if these people, not all of them, are completely ignorant of history, what has gone on in the recent past, what has gone on in the last 100 years in other countries where these policies have been implemented. Yes, something you just mentioned. Who's going to pick up the tab? How are they going to defray for all these projects, such as free subways or free buses? And how are they going to, be able to afford to pay a $30 an hour minimum wage? Businesses over the last, say, 5 or 6 years have been struggling enough. This has basically put a kill job on them. Would you care to respond?
Well, what was your last statement there, George?
If they raised the minimum wage to $30 an hour in New York City, that would put a kill job on all the small businesses that have survived.
Of course. If you're going to give a high minimum wage, hourly wage to the average worker, knowing full well that those businesses can't pay it, then it's an indirect way of destroying small businesses, which is a maxim of the Jesuit order in destroying the Reformation, out of which was born the middle class and private businessmen. And further, it shows that he is willingly ignorant of the fact that a businessman must make a profit. So he must buy his items that he's going to resell at the lowest price he can find and then sell it at the highest price. That's called laissez-faire, government hands-off, free enterprise. It's the only working model of business that produces wealth. 80% of all Americans were employed by small businesses, not the corporations. So he's showing his ignorance of economics, because you can't do that and expect these little businesses to survive. But maybe that's what he's doing. The only ones that can survive are the big, huge, massive mega corporations. And that's all they want to have, because that's what was in the Dark Ages. The kings and the lords all had corporations for making money, and the little guy didn't have anything. Of course, there was no middle class before the Reformation, during the Dark Ages. So he's just a Dark Age Jesuit coadjutor, and everything he does will tend to counter Reformation.
Well, I've heard people say online in that the election or the victory of Mondami, the selection of Mondami basically exposes the xenophobia and bigotry we have that's so rampant in the United States. Well, he has brown skin, he's Muslim, he wasn't born here. And of course, this brings out people's worst fears that he's going to turn New York City into a caliphate or something along those lines. So I think the Jesuits picked a figure like Mondami for those very reasons. People will have a visceral reaction against him and what he represents.
That's
and
right.
It's just like, and I'm not sure if he's bred in or if he's just simply a useful idiot, but he's not proposing these policies on his own. He's being told what to do through Fordham and through Georgetown.
Yeah.
And somebody was telling me that Donald Trump, just before the election, was tweeting. He said, if Mondami were elected, that would be one of the best things that could possibly happen to his administration.
And why is that, George?
Even though, before I answer that, even though publicly Trump had been supporting his fellow Fordham member, Andrew Cuomo, the ex-governor of New York. Well, so are you saying that they probably brokered a backroom deal and they said, hey, you know what? It'd be wonderful if Mondami got elected mayor of New York, because things are going to fall apart quickly there. Things are going to get way worse.
Sure.
It's going to go through the roof of every type.
And going into free fall. And you see, that's exactly what Trump wants with Mondami, because then Trump will be able to declare martial law in New York City, which is the end game here for the Jesuits.
Okay, well, they had to be careful with a place like New York City, because that's a major piece of real estate. because the Big Apple generates something like one something like 10% of the wealth for the United States. That is, even though the political capital is in DC and the entertainment capital is in Los Angeles, New York City is the financial and cultural capital of the US.
That's right.
Because,
All left-wing, socialist, communist, quote unquote, liberal, gun-grabbing, anti-white, pro-black, everything that the Jesuits have executed in pursuance with their quest of counter-reformation and destroying historic white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Western civilization. Because before New York was New York, it was
Amsterdam.
New Amsterdam. That's right, with the Dutch, which is the Protestant Dutch. So they're busy destroying it as fast as they can. All the while trying to shut up people like us when telling this by calling us racist, sexist, and bigots, and therefore we're not worth to be listened to. When we have the answers, we know the dialectic, Reformation, Counter-Reformation, then back to the Dark Ages, which includes the destruction of white race nations. Read the Bible. Go ahead, George.
Okay, so, however, the mayoral race in New York City was not the only election last week. There were several others. One was in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And I guess last week they just elected their first female governor there. And her name is Abigail Spangenberger. And
some white leftist feminist.
Yes. Who was or is in the CIA. She was actually an analyst for them.
Yeah, and the black woman that ran against her was a decent individual. And so she was not selected, so they gave it to the white leftist, socialist, communist, feminist to rule the Commonwealth of Virginia, that was the greatest bulwark against the temporal power of the Pope and for several centuries, which is why Virginia was destroyed by the Yankee Union Army during the Pope's war on the American states, the southern states.
And of course, and we just have talked about New York City, Virginia, and of course, we'd be remiss, excuse me, if we did not discuss New Jersey. So New Jersey just elected or selected its second female governor, Rebecca Michelle Sherrill, who goes by Mikey. Yes, Mikey. Which is odd. So, in case you were wondering, Spangenberger was in CIA. Sherrill was naval intelligence. And
naval intelligence is one of the top intelligence communities of the country.
Yes.
When you get in, you don't get out. So she still is part of it.
Okay. So this is her academic background. She got her undergrad degree from the Naval Academy in Annapolis. She got a master's degree from the London School of Economics and a law degree from Georgetown University.
Well, she's raring to go. The Jesuits have selected her, they trained her, and now we'll see what further destruction they can bring upon historic white Protestant Virginia.
Actually, Sherrill was in New Jersey and Spangenberger was in Virginia.
Pardon me, New Jersey. Pardon me. Well, New Jersey was very white
of course,
Protestant too. And so they have destroyed that place. That's why I've advocated just give the whole state of New Jersey to the blacks. Vast majority of them hate us white people. Hey, well, I want to help you. I want to help you have your own state here in the United States, and a perfect one to start with is New Jersey because it's at least 50% black. You can have everything, the railroads, the airports, the farming, the industry, take it all, and you got a coast where you can have shipping. It's a beautiful little state for the blacks to have their own nation state and be prosperous and never be bothered by white people again.
Okay, and of course, and just to mention something else about Virginia, they also elected a new attorney general, Jay Jones. Yes, that's his name, Jay Jones, who's black or
he's a mulatto. He's a mulatto that hates white people. and threatened to shoot his opponent. So that's African savagery there at its finest. And he is elected, or was he selected? I don't know, but probably selected to further the left-right paradigm where the right is generally white and the left is generally black. So they're fomenting not just a civil war, but a race war. And the mulattoes will join the blacks and use the brains of their white mothers to use them against the white people well, it's really a civil war has been raging since the 50s, but now it's going to go violent. Joe Rogan talked about, well, we're closer to civil war than ever. And Joe Rogan, that CIA asset, maybe he's throwing that out there just for, thoughts.
So are you talking about the Roman Catholic Freemasonic Joe Rogan?
That's right. Roman Catholic Freemasonic Joe Rogan. So we're close.
Well, somebody was.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, somebody was talking the other day about his British counterpart, Russell Brand. And I know we talked about him, and we're assuming he's a him. So they basically cover a similar material. So Brand is over in Britain, and Joe is over here, I guess, in Austin, Texas. And they both have had similar careers in that they're both a member of SAG, the Screen Actors Guild of America. They both have been actors and comedians, and they're both heavily.
The Screen Actors Guild is an absolute communist organization, a socialist communist organization. Screen Actors Guild.
Yes, it is. No, as I said, I understand that Russell Brand has recently converted to the Catholic Church.
That's the biggest communist organization in the world. The Jesuits. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, something we mentioned before, one of Brand's tattoos is of a 33. And I'm not sure why he got that. Maybe that's his lucky number.
Yeah. Don't know.
Well, well, I mean, I know that certain numbers mean different things, such as 6 is the number of man, 7 is the number of completeness, 8 is new beginnings, 10 is law, 11 is unity among Masons. Or I'm sorry, 11 means order, 13 is unity among Masons.
Huh.
And they have, and I know this sounds incredibly superstitious, and it is, but they have reasons behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Why they choose certain numbers.
Right. Well, it goes back to their numerology, and there's certain people that are very good in that, and they study numerology for years and can give you a generally cogent reason why it was done on a certain day or a certain number was used. It makes perfect sense because the Jesuits are the great masters of numerology also.
Okay, 19, for example, is the number of chaos, such as there were supposed to have been 19 hijackers on 9/11.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They called it COVID-19. The Rolling Stones had a song back in the 60s called 19th Nervous Breakdown.
Oh, yeah, the Rolling Stones comes here 19th Nervous Breakdown. Yeah, we can Mick Jagger, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, okay, I'm not being hyperbolic. The Knights of Malta specifically ran the Rolling Stones.
Yes, you've said that before. Mm-hmm.
Okay, their manager was Lord Lowenstein, who is a Knight of Malta.
Did you say Lowenstein?
Yes.
Yeah. Lowenstein is German.
Yes, it means lion stone.
Or be out of Bavaria, I would imagine.
Okay. So anyhow, so you had all these insane races. So how would you explain all these things happening at once in New Jersey and Virginia, in New York City? All these leftist, communist, socialist figures are being elected into office as governor, as mayor, as district attorney. And yeah, this has happened before, but this all has happened at once. How do you explain that?
Simple. The Jesuits are bringing it about. to justify Trump or some new right leader to declare a national emergency and to put the troops in the streets in the major cities to round them up and send them to camps. That's why. Remember, the model is after World War I, the Bolsheviks, the communists, took over Munich for some 19 months or so. And they were leading Jews who were the Bolsheviks, the communists. And so when the NSDAP comes to power, when the Nazis come to power, they are struck back. So they did this to drive the white German people, primarily the Roman Catholics at the time, and also the Prussians in the East, because they were being attacked by the communist Bolsheviks in the East, to drive the Prussians and the Catholic Bavarians together under the Third Reich that would go after the communists. And so it's the same thing here. They're driving all the white people, the Protestants, the Baptists, the Catholics together into the new right. That was the whole purpose of Charlie Kirk, to bring all these white peoples of different Protestant beliefs and Catholic and the other heresies like the Mormons and the science. What's that one?
Scientology?
Yeah, Scientology with Tom Cruise, the member, to bring them all in. So in the building of the new right. So what they did in Germany in the 20s, early 30s is what they're doing here. That's the only way you can make sense of this.
Okay, so do you think any of these elections were organic or were they rigged?
Well, I believe that these elections were most assuredly rigged, because we have a book called Vote Scam by Collier and Collier, and it tells you as long as you're using the voting machines, they're rigged. They're rigged by the ones who set the machines. So it's just another agitation. And they're going to drive all the Jews in New York City out. The Hasidics, they helped to put Ma'am Danny in power, but they also deny Israel's right to exist. And they also deny that Israel has to be a nation before the coming of Messiah, which is totally unbiblical. So they're going to use this to round up the Jews. And the other thing they're doing now, when they have Chucky Schumer, who's responsible for the closing down of the country and all these people not getting food and not getting paid and so on, they're going to blame that on the Jew, Chucky Schumer, and therefore they're going to blame all Jews in general. So he's playing the game of blame the Jew for the benefit of the Pope and his revived Latin kingdom of Jerusalem, which is Israel. Go ahead, George.
Okay, so, well, yes, before I forget, so I guess the shutdown, which you're referencing, officially ended today on November the 12th, which just so happens to be the Superior General's, Arturo Sosa's, birthday. The Superior General is also known as the Black Pope.
I see.
So do you think this date is coincidental to end the shutdown?
The shutdown was orchestrated from stem to stern. Trump, Schumer, that little wicked witch, what's her name? Costa, what's her name?
Oh, there's so many, it's hard to keep them straight. Mike Johnson, I know he's not a witch.
Well, she's the one, Cortez.
Yes.
She's a little Roman Catholic Jesuitess, agitator. So they're all under orders to do this on one side and on the other. And to the end that they can blame the Jew now for what was lost, the funds that were lost, and the air traffic controllers that couldn't work, and everything, all the ripples through the culture. They can now blame the Jews for it because Chucky Schumer was the leader of it. Brilliant plan. Of course, he's B'nai B'rith too. He's a brother Freemason, subject to the Jesuits. Go ahead, George.
Well, I know we've mentioned this before, but I know Chuck Schumer has been going to Al Smith dinners for probably since at least the 1980s. And I can confirm that he was at the 2016 because Donald Trump actually acknowledged him. You refresh your memory? I guess in 2016 they had the Al Smith dinner between the two leading candidates, Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, who at the time was, well, actually, she was the Secretary of State. That was her most recent position. And when Donald Trump was making his opening remarks, he thanked His Eminence Timothy Michael Cardinal Dolan, the Knight of Malta and Archbishop of New York City. Trump was acknowledging several people: Michael Bloomberg, the late Henry Kissinger, and Chuck Schumer. And Trump said, "Chuck, but when I was a Democrat, you liked me. What happened?" And so I guess Chuck chuckled because, well, boy, it was almost like watching the Dean Martin celebrity roast from the 1970s, where they're all poking fun at each other. And do you remember the fellow who opened the dinner back in 2016 was Al Smith the Fourth? I guess his great grandson. I guess, and I guess he'd had some sort of surgery, so he had he had a mechanical voice, and so he was acknowledging some of the people whom Donald Trump mentioned: Bloomberg, Kissinger, and Schumer. And he said, "Well, I'm glad you're all here. You're obviously devout Roman Catholics." So he said that in reference to Schumer. Schumer and Bloomberg.
They're the Pope's court Jews. That's all they are. We see all these stupid young white men that have never been taught anything. They don't know the Bible. They don't know true history. And they're falling for blaming the Jews. They just pulled something down in Mississippi with the leader, one of the speakers at Turning Point USA, who's a Jewish guy. And some Mississippi white kid talked about the Jews, and I guess he threw something at them. And, they don't know anything. They don't know Turning Point USA is totally in the hands of the Pope, and specifically the Club of Rome, and for the purpose of creating the new right. And they use certain token Jews for that, but they're going to blame the Jews for it, which is going to continue to spread because the white young men of this country do not believe the Bible. They don't read the Bible. And so they're going to be suckers for Satan's bait to blame the Jews for all of this.
Well, I know we've talked about the whole Charlie Kirk situation, and I think we have slightly different views as to what happened a couple months ago on September the 10th. And, well, regardless of what actually happened, was he actually killed or something else? I'm not sure. The only point is it was meant to create division because you got immediate reactions from both the so-called right and the so-called left. Each side was blaming each other. So the alleged shooter, Tyler Robinson, they said, well, he grew up Mormon, he grew up MAGA, and his boyfriend, roommate, whatever, is transitioning into being a woman. So the whole story doesn't make sense because, it has some JFK elements to it, because how many homosexuals were involved with the whole JFK situation?
Right. Exactly right. So they didn't resolve the JFK. They didn't properly solve that. They didn't properly solve the Kirk assassination. So they're going to get all kinds of mileage. They're going to blame the left, Tyler Robinson. See what these leftists have done? They're killing all this and this right. He never shot anybody. It's like Oswald never shot anybody. So it's all bait promoted by the Pope's CFR controlled press to drive us to the extreme that the papacy wants.
And of course, before we end the stream, I do need to mention a couple of deaths. I know it's been a while since we've done a stream. Oh my, has it been a month? I guess. But you have my condolences on the death of Dick Cheney.
Well, we all went out to dinner and celebrated his death. We actually told the waitress, we're out here going to have a wonderful dinner. celebrating the death of one of the most wicked, evil men that ever disgraced this country, was Richard Cheney. 33rd degree Freemason, a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, got us into the war in Iraq with no plan to relieve it. I mean, one of the most sinister evil men. And if you want to see how wickedly immoral he was, you just got to read Kathy O'Brien's work, Transformation of America. So he's gone, thank God.
Yeah. Okay.
Right,
So
we
among the other things,
celebrated the death of our inspector too, so that was a delight. When Chucky Schumer dies, we're going to celebrate his death too.
um, okay. Well, among other things, Dick Cheney was the vice president under George W. Bush in 9/11. And from 1994 to 2001, Cheney was on the board of directors of Raytheon. And his wife, Lynn,
Raytheon. Now, what's Raytheon, George?
is basically a defense contractor.
Defense contract.
And,
They're known for their air-to-air missiles.
oh, okay.
When I was in the Air Force, we worked on the Sparrows. They're called AIM-7s. And the guidance unit for the AIM-7 was made by Raytheon. Go ahead.
Okay, and I need to make a correction. Did I say defense contractor? I'm sorry, I meant to say crusade contractor. And
What kind of contractor, George?
crusade.
Oh, yeah, papal crusading contractor. Yeah. Oh, building for the Pope's crusades. Yeah. Every war American has been in since no later than World War II, really World War I, has been a papal crusade. Using the American blood treasure to further the temporal power of the Pope of Rome and destroy the Reformation. Yeah.
And his wife, Lynn, or I guess his widow now, was on the board of directors for Lockheed Martin from 1995 to 2000. So once again, do you mind if I repeat that?
Please do. Remember, Lockheed Martin makes the F-15 and other wonderful high-tech fighters. I believe they make also the F-35. It's all Lockheed Martin. Go ahead. And also William Buckley, the Buckleys, the Knights of Malta Buckley family, is very much a part of owning Lockheed Martin. And that's in a book titled Real Lace, America's Irish Rich by Stephen Birmingham. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so once again, Dick Cheney was on the board of directors for Raytheon from 1994 to 2001. So just prior to becoming vice president. His wife, Lynn, was on the board of directors for Lockheed Martin from 1995 to 2000. So they're both on board of directors for these war machine companies just prior to 9/11. So you don't think there could have been a conflict of interest there?
Oh, of course not. If you're involved in declaring war or making war, and you own you're part of these defense contractors and making lots of money, would you think there's a problem, a conflict of interest? Of course.
Well, and I know I brought this up 4 or 5 years ago. Anthony Fauci, who was at the National Institute of Health from 1968 to 2022, so roughly 54 years, and he was the director of the National Institute, the Institute of Infectious Diseases from 1984 to his retirement. Among other things, he was on the board of directors of the Melinda Gates Foundation. So, in addition to making almost $500,000 a year,
that's right,
as a public servant at the time of his retirement.
George, hold it. Just for being a member of the senior executive service, over $400,000 a year, more than what the president is paid. That's Fauci.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So that's like being an admiral or a general. It's like a 05, 06 pay, and he gets at least 3/4 of that at retirement. Sure. Now you're just talking about his pension. That's not including all the kickbacks he got from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So Fauci was probably not a billionaire, but he's probably worth several hundred million.
Several hundred million, for sure. And remember, Melinda Gates' uncle was a Jesuit priest. So you can't forget that connection with the Gates boys or Gates family. Go ahead, George.
Okay, and Melinda's aunt was also a Dominican nun. As a matter of fact, it was this aunt who taught Melinda how to read.
Okay, very good.
She mentioned that in yes, I am.
You got the papal connections everywhere with the Gates. Go ahead, George.
Yes, yes, you do. So anyhow, so you have these people with all these connections. As I said, Dick Cheney died last week at the age of 84. And it's interesting, he shared the same birthday as with Christian Bale. Dick was born, well, both Dick and Christian were born on the 30th of January, Dick in 1941 and Christian in 1974. And so why do I mention Christian Bale? Well, back in 2018, they did a movie about, or Hollywood did a movie about Dick Cheney. It was called Vice. And it was fairly accurate. I mean, they pulled some punches, but he wasn't painted in a favorable light. You know, there was no mention of the Vatican or the Jesuits or anything along those lines.
Yeah. By the way, it was made called W. And in that movie W, Dick Cheney is portrayed by that Jewish actor who was in the movie Jaws, Richard Dreyfuss.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard Dreyfuss portrays Dick Cheney. And one of the questions that put to him is, what's our evacuation? What's our withdrawal? And he says, there isn't any. So the movie W really portrays Dick Cheney as the sinister, evil man that he was.
So do you have anything else you'd like to add?
That's about it. I'm just glad he's gone, and may the Lord deliver us from more people like him, there are hundreds of them in the district of Catholics there. District of communists, district of coloreds, district of those socialist communists that want to destroy the average white Anglo-Saxon Protestant working man. And it's not going to stop until someplace we declare independence and seek to start our own nation. And that's what I recommend for the blacks, the very same thing. For the black Christian people, they need to do the same thing. So,
well, you know,
that I have, George, and you have any more?
Well, I just want to mention one other thing. I know denominational labels are almost meaningless these days for a number of reasons. But for what it's worth, Dick Cheney was a Methodist, as was his wife. Now, I looked this up. Lynn actually started out as a Presbyterian, but she switched over to the Methodist Church when she married Dick. And so it doesn't matter what you call yourself. The Jesuits will use whomever they have to.
Oh, yeah. And in those apostate Protestant churches, which Methodist is one of them, they'll act just like the Roman Catholics. They'll do exactly what they're told. Anything for money, sex, and power. So, yep.
And of course, speaking of obituaries, I guess the other day, was it on November the 9th? Paul Tablio died at the age of 84. So he was born on the 24th of 1940 and died, as I said, in November the 1925. So Tablio was the commissioner of the National Football League, the NFL, from 1989 to 2006. And, okay, so why am I bringing him up? Well, he got his undergrad degree from Georgetown University.
So he is was the commissioner of National Football League?
Correct.
I find it intriguing because the founder of the NFL was the great athlete American Indian, Jim Thorpe. And there's a very good documentary on Netflix, I believe, on Jim Thorpe. I recommend the listeners listen to it. Or view it. It's very good. But so you take this great Native American Indian athlete Jim Thorpe, and he will be used to found the National Football League. And then the Jesuits will control it with their knights, like they do with baseball. Bowie Kuhn out of Malta, the baseball commissioners, all knights, to preoccupy the American people with the ridiculous sports, and while they're busy losing their country and their history and their nation. Yeah.
Okay, and there's just a couple other details I need to mention about Tablio. Um, he went to St. Michael's High School in Union City, New Jersey, which is Catholic.
Mhm.
And after he left the commissionership or whatever you call it of the NFL, he joined the board of trustees at Georgetown, where he worked with Paul Pelosi Sr. and Eric Trump. What would you like me to repeat that?
Please do.
Okay, so after uh, Paul Tablio left the commissioner's office for the NFL, he joined the board of trustees at Georgetown University,
Kind of cutting out,
where he
George. I
worked
don't know what's
Paul
up,
Pelosi
George.
Sr., Nancy's husband.
George, you're kind of cutting out. So just try to
Yes,
say
sir.
it again. Keep your mouth to the microphone and try not to cut out. Okay? Are you there?
All right. So, okay. I'll check the connectivity. So, Paul Tablio left the commissioner's office for the NFL in 2006. Afterwards, he joined the board of trustees for Georgetown University, where he was an alumni. So while he is on the board of trustees at Georgetown University, he worked with Paul Pelosi Sr., Nancy's husband, and Eric Trump, Donald's son.
They're all together, aren't they? They all work together.
Yes.
The Jesuit all-seeing eye. Yep. Okay, George, we got to go. So please give your contact info so the listeners can be in touch with you. And
Oh, okay. Well, I had some other material to present, but I guess we'll have to hold off on that. Okay, so if people
yeah,
have any.
if you have some other material, it's only going to take a few minutes. That's fine. But if not, we'll just wait till our next broadcast.
Okay, well, I don't want to rush through it, so I'll just pick it up next time.
Okay, very good. All right. So your contact info, George, is
Okay, if people have any questions, comments, concerns, critiques, questions, please email me at georgewidger1969 at gmail.com. georwidger1969 at gmail.com. If there's a topic you'd like me to cover or cover again, please let me know. Also, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you're writing from, how long you've been listening, or just give me a couple of details. And well, hopefully we'll be on a little bit sooner. Our gap between our next broadcast won't be as long as it was from our previous one. And actually, do you mind if I just mention one thing before we do sign off?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Um, I mentioned this to you briefly. I was watching a debate recently from, I guess it took place this summer in New York City. It was between Dan Wilson of the YouTube site Debunk the Funk and Dave Farina of Professor Dave Explains. They were arguing the pro-vaccine side against the so-called anti-vaccine side. The representatives for the anti-vax were Steve Kirsch and Pierre Corey. And I know you and I have talked about this a couple of times off air, but one of the things that Dave Farina mentioned, Professor Dave, is that his son has autism. And he said it has absolutely nothing to do with the MMR shot he received because that was just a pure coincidence. That was just,
Coincidence. Oh, I love it. Scientific coincidence. Was it a
well,
coincidence that Europe has banned the MMR shot? Is that coincidence?
of course.
He's a liar, so there's no need to debate a liar. But go ahead.
Okay, so and before, so at this debate, the host said, "Well, do you want to take a few minutes each to make some opening comments?" And Dave, didn't mention the anecdote about his son having autism, but he said, "I can't believe in 2025 we're still having this discussion. There is no there is no nexus whatsoever between the MMR shot and autism or any other cognitive issue,
That's
and
one
it
of the
makes
dumbest statements I've ever heard. I could destroy that. I can cite at least 5 books with documentation showing the damage that's done. But evidently,
okay,
he's not concerned with the facts because he has a religion to defend, and his religion is to defend the inoculations put upon us by the Jesuit order, as they said they would do that to us in their book that they wrote, The Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. It was a forgery attributed to the Jews. When the Jesuits wrote it, everything in it's true, but the Jesuits have done it. And one of them is Protocol 19 about inoculations. So this guy doesn't know history, secret societies, conspiracy, or the general facts behind the MMR injection or poisoning. Anyway, George, go ahead. We got to end here shortly. So,
okay. So I looked at his background. Now, other than being of Italian descent, I know that he speaks Italian and Latin. I don't have any concrete proof that he's Catholic or was raised Catholic or is a Mason or anything along those lines. However, I can just simply look at his fruits. One of the one of the things he has said is this is back in October of last year, so just over a year ago, is that no, the United States government does not control the weather. They don't have a weather machine. These hurricanes that hit Florida
another
and
another blatant lie. I went to a, a, a presentation 3 weeks ago in Mount Pleasant called Eyes Wide Open. And there, one of the speakers absolutely proves that the military government here, the government here, is controlling the weather, and he proves it with one proof after another. So this guy doesn't want the facts. Go ahead.
well, he's obviously a mouthpiece with a machine. Now, I'm not sure if okay, at minimum, he's a useful idiot. At worst, he's on their payroll.
Oh, he's got to be on there because he's not stupid. He's got to be on their payroll. Yeah.
Ah, well, and as always, Brother Eric, it's a pleasure to be on with you. And the time just goes by too quickly.
I know. But I'm going to blame you for that, George.
Okay, well, guilty as charged. But and so I guess I should talk to you soon, brother.
Okay, you gave your contact info. Then I'll
Would you
go
like
ahead
me to
and close.
give it again?
Yeah, give it again, please.
Okay, so for those of you who might have missed it, my contact information is George Widger 1969 at gmail.com. GEORWIDGER 1969 at gmail.com. And as I said, if you have any questions, comments, criticisms, complaints, and if you have any hate mail, just send them directly to Eric.
Yeah, well, I've got enough of that. So, okay,
Oh,
George, well, thanks for being with us on the podcast today. Brother Eric John Phelps, 24/7 World Radio Podcast. Thank you for listening. And you can listen to this podcast at 247worldradio.com. Scroll up to archives, archive shows, hit that, and go down to EJP Hour 1 and hit that, and then you'll see its guests. And then you go down to George Widger, pardon me, and click on the George Widger tab, and then you can listen to this most recent one there. And as George said, we're going to try to do a little more often, at least twice a month, maybe 3 times a month, to keep everybody updated on the Jesuit design against America, as well as anything else we're up to. So, again, thank you for listening. May the Lord bless you to do his will according to his word. The AV 1611 Reformation English Bible. The God has commanded all men everywhere to repent and to believe the gospel that Christ died for your sins and buried and rose again. And upon believing that gospel, the Lord will save you and reserve an inheritance for you that will never fade away in heaven. So until we meet again, Lord bless, Maranatha.